Okay, let's take the discussion to the floor. Achieving an inclusive society, creating synergies between social protection, the labor market, and the economy. Shall we start on this side? Please introduce yourself and also indicate which panelist you're directing your question to, and then get into the question.
So it's Selemuloy from West Business School. I have a question for Iraj. He spoke passionately about the clear strategy that we need to use to hold government accountable by sacking those who are inefficient, who are incompetent. But he has not given us a clear strategy. As you have said, that capitalism has failed, but we don't have a clear strategy that goes beyond taxing these people. If you look at the calamities that have been left by capitalism, the less we speak about Marikana, the better. You speak about Bridge, you speak about African Bank. People are being blacklisted out there. Then what do we do? How can we do that? At the same time, I also have a question for Dr. Omilola there. At the same time, we cannot really pretend that we know what is it that the poor need. Because we come with paternalistic products that we think that the poor needs without involving the poor in developing those products. Because now here we can sit in this air-conditioned building and pretend as if we know what is it the poor need. We think that the poor need only jobs. What is it that the poor need? Are we intimate with the poor? Do we understand what is it that they need? Thank you.
Thank you. Are you noting that?
Okay, my name is Tengo Tengela. I've got some few questions that I want to raise. The first question is, I think that there should be a context around which we debate issues of social protection, in a sense that we can't discuss social protection or a welfare state without appreciating the context in which and the social forces that gave rise to the welfare state, and whether today the nature of capitalism that we have in the world actually does it militate or acts in favor of a welfare state. And I want to give some examples to bring the debate quite home, because I don't think that we can treat a welfare state without treating it inductively, particularly in a South African context. Whether could we rely only on social protection outside the social wage, in the absence of a better free education, free, affordable, qualitative healthcare system, proper public transport. And I'm raising these precisely because if you look at the workers who actually, their spending patterns, actually a huge chunk of what they earn actually is spent on transport, on health, on education, and all of that. That's what the poor spends on, including high food prices and all those things. So we do need to bring home the question of social, what do we mean by social protection in the South African context, and look at the historical context of the South African situation. The second issue I want to raise is whether you could have proper social protection outside a state having an income policy. Because most of the social democratic state in welfare states, whether in Sweden, wherever, not the countries, the instrument they used to intervene in addressing issues of redistribution was either through incomes policy. The second issue, and the last issue which I want to raise is that I think that Iraj must not take the issues of GEAR quite, for granted. Just to assist what my comrade there was raising. The impact of GEAR, you could see it. One, for example,
Can we please avoid parallel discussions? Sorry.
Building a welfare state also requires an industrial capacity. The state must have an industrial capacity, productive capacity. What we know, just to show you that I've read GEAR, part of the proposal it put on the table was the liberalization of trade, drastic liberalization of our tariffs, reducing them, and what has been the impact of that? Where you look at the textile sector, look at the minerals, and the metals and engineering sector, the closures that have taken place there, and all those. You also must look at the composition of growth that we're talking about. Whether have we been the accumulation that has been taking place in the economy has been at the sphere of production or at the sphere of circulation.
Okay.
You see, and the last point I wanted to make is the other impact. If we talk about 20% of capital flight, 20% of our GDP, of capital flight in the South African economy, particularly the big conglomerates listing outside the South African economy. If we compare that, if we were to look at what would be the impact of that in terms of social provisioning, which I don't see, I'm not listening to, I've not heard to some of the presenters articulating what would be the impact of the state provisioning of some of these services, whether it be health, whether it be education, whether it be public transport, provided directly by the state. What would be the impact of that?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Paul Mutlala. I would want to pose my input to Miriam and partly to Andrew.
Okay.
In relation to the rural areas in the main, the issue of the skills development, the FETs and your technical schools, you have correctly raised that there are challenges there, that those are very weak, and there are enough people who don't actually make it onto the matric. So my suggestion is that why don't we perhaps look at a situation where we say that in most wards, you'll find that there is no FET, and a ward will be a very widely dispersed, a wide area, where people might not be able to reach the FET that is there in a particular area. So I'm saying before we actually focus only on the weakness of the quality of education and the FET and technical skills, can't we perhaps look that we make sure that those facilities are available in those areas that are not there?
Thank you.
Maybe we can even go to an extent of saying per ward, when they do the IDPs, must ensure that at least they consider those technical schools which will make people employable. Thank you.
Let's get responses from the panel, and then we will come to the people in the middle lane. Iraj,
okay,
do you want to do the honors?
Thank you very much. To just assure you that it's not that I'm passionate about public sector. I'm equally passionate that when corporates abuse their positions in terms of collusion, abuse of resources, they should equally be kept accountable. I am horrified that when there is collusion in construction, in bread making, in pharmaceuticals, they get away with murder. I'm horrified that the bank charges, after a commission, they squashed the commission's report and we haven't seen it. Those are equally as part of national resource base. You see, no matter what ism we subscribe to, we have a national endowment that should be used by public sector and private sector. And each of them that abuses it, we should keep them to account. So the reason I expressed it in this context for the public sector is because the poor globally are far more dependent on the efficiency of the public sector. It doesn't mean that they are not affected by the shenanigans of the private sector in terms of price fixing, et cetera, et cetera. So I think I'm not just talking about the public sector, but equally we need to be reconfiguring our macro picture so that private sector does not abuse resources and abuse the poor and exacerbates their situation. So that, and in terms of, should I also refer to our colleague who talked about, thank you for having red gear. It's a bit too late because it ended its life in 2001. But the point that you make is absolutely right, that trade liberalization was part of the strategy. But part of the reasoning that we had to do trade liberalization was because apartheid had left a hothouse here, completely inefficient through the barricades of trade protection. And therefore, the economy was inefficient. Therefore, the poor were paying more for everything that they had to pay, and the society was paying. And the South African economy was really excluded from the global economy. You want to now integrate in the global economy, you have to have a few basic requirements. One, you got to make sure that global capital and technology can come in. Because for 20 odd years, South African technology was pretty outdated. We needed the technology to upgrade the economy. We needed capital to come in. We needed to give them assurance that when they bring their capital, they'll be able to take their profits out. So what do? How do you, if you're a poor economy that hasn't got the savings, we didn't have it then and we don't have it now, and you are dependent on other people's savings, how do you do it without liberalizing? Can you make it more protective and then say, well, I want your money, but don't ask me whether you can take it?
I'm just worried that we're falling into that trap that you spoke about earlier about having enough talk shops, and we've had enough discussions about gear, and the discussion today should start to encourage
going forward,
working on this new plan, this new blueprint that we have. Miriam, what are your responses?
To the role question?
Yes.
Agreed. I think it's a very good idea. I mean, it's a very practical idea. The key issue, we were talking about skills earlier. It's a much bigger issue, that you need ubiquitous availability of high quality and affordable education. And, just coming to the practical point about the training element is, we all know that there's too much emphasis on matric, was part of the point of what I was getting to, and not enough on what would be a perfectly reasonable thing for what people could have. If you had a good grade, where are we now? 9. Most people leave high school between grade 10 and 12. Having a grade 9 that's a good grade 9, and having some kind of further education and training between grade 10 and 12 that puts you into a vocational opportunity is a very good thing, and actually quite appropriate for most people. And that's really where the big gap lies right now, both urban and rural.